As the Big 12 looks towards survival and expansion now, Pete Thamel of Yahoo Sports has laid out a very creative plan for how the Big 12 can survive. And to be honest, I'm on board to an extent. We'll explain coming up in the video today. Welcome into the channel. I am John Kurtz. If you have not subscribed, please do so right now. I'm talking college football every day on this channel. Right now, that means conference realignment every day on this channel, as I try to give the Big 12 a voice on a national scene when it does not have much of one. Like and comment on the videos. All of that stuff really does help me out a lot. So everybody thinks they have the perfect solution to keeping the Big 12 alive nowadays, right? Everybody has their perfect combination of teams. Everybody thinks the league should do this, they should do that, unless, of course, you're one of the Big 12 schools still holding on hope that you will get into another Power 5 conference at some point. Well, the latest theory comes from Pete Thamel of Yahoo Sports, and I've got to be honest, I like the way he's thinking. I don't know that his plan is perfect, but I really like where his head's at. So he says the best plan for the Big 12 going forward is to expand to 16 teams, plant his flag in football-fertile TV markets from coast to coast, and have some patience to watch the league evolve back into a national power. He says that would make the Big 12 appetizing to media partners, especially if it embraces, now wait for this, especially if it embraces weeknight games, unconventional kickoff times, and anything else that can create value. Now, that is the type of thinking I think the league needs to be doing right now. Now, I know that's kind of jarring for some of us to hear because you immediately think of weeknight kickoff times and you think, well, that's the max lane, right? I mean, that's small-time stuff for smaller leagues. But the Big 12 doesn't have much of a choice right now than to try and brand and market itself as something different because the other four leagues have basically siphoned themselves off as the traditional, this is how everything has always been done kind of leagues right now. If you're interested in the specifics of the plan here, he does lay out the schools that he thinks should be added. That would be BYU, Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, Houston, UCF, USF, and Cincinnati. He says Memphis and Tulane could also be considered. The bonus here, there are some pretty stout basketball programs in there. Yeah, there are, but again, nobody really cares ultimately about basketball in all of this, as Kansas has found out very quickly. He says to break those 16 teams into 4 pods to keep some of the league's familiarity. So you'd have Boise, BYU, Colorado State, and San Diego State in one pod, Iowa State, KU, K-State, Oklahoma State in another, Baylor, TCU, Tech, and Houston in a third, and then Cincy, West Virginia, and the 2 Florida schools, UCF and USF, in a fourth. So, I mean, that all makes a lot of sense. If you want to go that route, add that many schools, those 4 pods definitely do make some sense. Now, I think there's a chance 14 would be the ideal number to stop at if we're talking about actual value and potential that could be added for schools, even if you're projecting on down the road. But let's get further into Pete Thamel's points here. He says going this big works out for the Big 12 in a few ways. First, it kneecaps the AAC and the Mountain West with such force that the Big 12 solidifies itself as the number 5 league in the country by a distance. And also shows the college football playoff that the league has all the teams outside the chosen 57 that would likely be considered for the college football playoff. I love those 2 points, and I think that's something that people have not been talking about enough here. I mean, the AAC really right now seems to feel like they have a chance to go take Big 12 schools, and they're really puffing out their chest and saying, hey, this is our time. Well, what better way to just end any of that talk than going and taking the 2 or 3 best teams from that league, and the same with the Mountain West, and yes, establishing yourself as the clear 5th best conference, which does have value now. Oklahoma and Texas, they continue to say they're staying until 2025. We'll see what actually happens, but right now, if that were the deal, by the time that hits in 2025, we're talking about new college football playoff, which would likely be expanded at that point, and then it's going to be all about the 6 best conference champions making it in. You would be virtually ensuring yourself every single year of getting a team in the college football playoff if you have totally kneecapped the AAC and the Mountain West and become the 5th best conference. So that does have a lot of value. And then when you're talking about the value of games being entertaining, people caring on a national level and watching the games, you've hit that because you have a conference now that everybody knows will be sending somebody to the college football playoff. So there is a ton of value in this. And man, you just think back to, a month ago when Bob Bowlesby kind of pulled the curtains up on ESPN's plan to use the AAC as a pawn to try and take out the Big 12, this would be the corresponding move. All right, fine. AAC, you're going to try and play that game. We'll take your 2 best schools and see what you guys can do without it. So I'm here for that, for the Big 12. Now, another pillar of this plan is, again, embracing those unique kickoff times and catering toward a specific audience, that audience being the football junkies and bettors. So here's what Thamel says. The new Big 12 needs to become as attractive to television as possible. It needs to become America's weeknight, late-night league. It needs to be a last-call hero and the go-to for bettors and football junkies. They need to play any weeknight in any window and build their programs that way. Embrace the unconventional. It's a tried-and-true path to relevance. Okay, I may balk a little bit at saying like totally tried and true path to relevance. I mean, there have been leagues that, the XFL, for instance, some of these professional football leagues have tried to do things like this and it hasn't totally worked. I understand the dynamics are much different in those scenarios than they are to here. But I think you have to be careful a little bit. But we talk about the MAC a lot more than we would if they were not playing on like Tuesday and Wednesday nights. There's no doubt about that. So there is some validity to what he's saying. I still, my natural reaction is just to cringe a little bit at thinking about like, God, you're going to kick games on Monday or Tuesday or whatever. If you want to embrace being the Thursday-Friday league and have a game of the week on Thursday and Friday, now that I think we're talking, and I can get behind embracing some of that more. I just think they should be open-minded to all of this and be willing to explore it. That would be my stance on it. Even if I'm not totally comfortable with everything right now, I think you have to be very open to that. Because if that adds TV value, you need it. You need it. You need TV value. You need TV money. And that is certainly catering toward a betting audience right now is a very good way to go. There's even this on the scheduling front from Thamel. He says the Big 12 should consider flex schedule options to give teams windows late in the season to play each other in big games to improve rankings. It's brilliant. Now, I don't know the logistics of how exactly you work that out, but if there are smarter people in a room together with the league that can figure that out, that's brilliant. Because whatever you can do at the end of the year when recency bias is a thing and you really need your best teams playing each other, and in a world where it's going to be tough to schedule primetime non-conference games because the SEC is going to be moving to 9 or 10 league games in all likelihood, and the other 3 teams in the leagues in the alliance are going to be scheduling each other. You'll have fewer opportunities for big-time games. You need to put a total premium on being able to, late in the year, get your best teams playing each other. So yeah, flex scheduling would be brilliant there. I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, but on the betting front, he mentions, could a betting company with a big streaming reach test just how maverick the Big 12 wants to become? That is the way things are moving these days. I bring up the example of the Dan Le Batard show and Meadowlark Media. They left ESPN, basically put themselves up for auction, and instead of going the traditional route, signing with Sirius or Spotify, something like that, which I realize is still a little bit different than it used to be 20 years ago, but a more conventional route that radio shows and programs like that go, they signed a deal with DraftKings for $50 million. And so DraftKings is now in charge of the distribution and all of that. Like, that's the way things are happening nowadays because betting is becoming such a big deal. So maybe that's what ends up happening with the Big 12. If you sign a short-term TV contract, then 3-4 years down the road, you become this late-night, zany, playing on weeknights, fun league that people are going to follow where you're getting a team in the playoff. Then a betting company is going to step up to the plate. Maybe that's the way to really increase your revenue here. I think those are the types of things that need to be on the table. Now, the kicker in all of this is going to be actually getting folks on board with that, actually getting athletic directors on board with that, university presidents, all the people in the room that you're going to need to get on board. And I'm not even at this point talking about just from the standpoint of some schools not wanting to commit long-term to this league, not wanting to expand because they still think they can find a home in a different league eventually. I'm talking about just being able to get people thinking like, okay, we could kick off on a Wednesday night, or we could sell our streaming rights to DraftKings. Like, those are going to be tough sells, I think, to people in general that are in those rooms. But desperate times call for desperate measures. And as Thamel points out, the Big 12 rights won't be overly expensive, and that's where the Big 12 gunslingers are going to have to resist their instinct and think long-term, something Texas and Oklahoma never allowed them to do, which that is a valid point. With Texas and Oklahoma in the room, they're obviously going to be thinking more traditionally most of the times. They kept the Big 12 from expanding back in 2016. Like, you have more freedom now and more creativity. You have to utilize that with those 2 schools gone. It says by going big, the Big 12 may take some short-term pain. The already shrunk pie would be cut up even smaller with more mouths. It would be smart to take a short TV deal, then use postseason appearances and weeknight success to come to market later in the decade with an identity. And an identity, I think, is an important part of this too, because the 8 schools that are left floundering right now don't have a ton of an identity. And if this can become your identity and your brand, so to speak, that would be an easier sell if you at least have an established brand and kind of know who you are. So, I think it's a great idea in theory. I don't know that I'm on board with totally everything. I don't know that I would want to kick off on Tuesday or Wednesday nights and really screw it up like that. I don't know that there are 8 teams worth adding that would legitimately provide enough value and potential in the future. But I think you could land somewhere at, hey, add 6 teams, play more games on Thursday and Friday, utilize flex scheduling, embrace gambling companies, and whatever little odds and ends you can throw in to cater to a gambling audience. I love all of that stuff. Love it all. So I'm willing to explore that road. I think this is the kind of thinking that needs to be happening in these meetings, and hopefully it is. Hopefully Pete Thamel's piece will get out there and spread the word on some of this. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you think this is totally off base, let me know. If you think there are 8 teams worth adding, let me know that too. Comment, like the video. It all really helps me out. And if you have not subscribed, I talk college football every single day. Right now I'm talking conference realignment every day. But we'll be talking plenty of football coming up soon too, because the football season is about to kick off. Try to give the Big 12 a voice here on this channel when there's not much of one nationally. Follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at John Kurtz Show. You can find more links to all of my content in the description of this video, and I will talk to you soon.